If you're the kind of person who keeps chasing people who never really choose you back, this is for you. If you don't fix this, you'll keep wasting nights staring at your phone, overthinking every silence, and slowly lowering your standards. Today I'll give you one rule and one line that changes how you respond in that moment. We'll use it in a real Friday night play-it-by-ear situation where your phone stays quiet and you'd normally double text. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. You're standing in your kitchen late at night, staring at your phone, waiting for a text that still hasn't come. You keep refreshing the thread even though nothing has changed. Your chest feels tight, your mind is racing, and every minute that passes makes you wonder what's wrong with you and why this person never seems to meet you where you are. You're exhausted, but you can't put the phone down because some part of you is hoping that maybe this time they'll finally choose you without you having to chase. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit: you can't convince someone to want you, and you can't build a real connection by auditioning for approval. You can pour your energy, time, attention, and emotional labor into someone who stays half-interested, but it will never create the kind of security your heart is looking for. If anything, it trains you to override your own needs just to stay close to someone who barely shows up for you. When you're stuck in that cycle, the pain is real. You replay the conversations, rewrite their messages in your mind, and try to decode what they meant when they said they were busy, tired, or just not sure. You wait for crumbs and call it connection. You apologize for things you didn't do. You shrink yourself just to stay likable. You ignore how drained you feel, how anxious you get before sending a simple message, how heavy it feels to always be the one initiating. And the stakes grow every time you let it slide, because the more you chase someone who doesn't choose you, the more you teach yourself that your worth depends on their attention. If nothing changes, you lose time, you lose your standards, and eventually, you lose trust in your own judgment. But today, you're going to learn how to stop doing that. You're going to learn how to notice the exact moment when you switch from relating to auditioning. You're going to learn how to pull your energy back from one-sided situationships, friendships, or almost relationships that keep you emotionally off balance. And you're going to learn how to choose yourself without guilt, without begging, without needing someone else to confirm that you matter. By the end of this lesson, you'll know how to walk away from dynamics that drain you, and you'll know how to respond instead of react when your emotions try to drag you back into old patterns. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. So here's where we're going. First, we're going to tear apart the belief that being chosen requires you to earn it. Next, we'll look at how to recognize the emotional pattern that keeps you chasing and how to interrupt it before it takes over. Then, we'll explore the shift from seeking approval to choosing alignment so you can stop trying to fix people who don't meet you halfway. After that, we'll look at the practical behaviors that help you pull your energy back in real moments, not just in theory. Finally, we'll put everything into a real-life scenario so you can see exactly how these tools work when the pressure is high. And in a bit, we'll walk through a Friday night moment where this shift actually saves you from spiraling over someone who leaves you on read, so you can feel how different it is when you act from clarity instead of panic. There's a moment you have to start paying attention to, because it's the moment where everything quietly goes wrong, the instant you feel someone pulling away and your instinct is to move closer. That tiny shift, that micro lean toward them, is the beginning of the chase. And if you never interrupt that instinct, you'll spend your life trying to secure people who like the attention of being wanted but have no intention of showing up for you. What you're learning now is simple but life-changing. When someone steps back, you don't step forward. You hold your ground. You breathe. You let their behavior speak for itself. If you don't, you'll keep abandoning your own needs just to keep a connection from collapsing. The reason this matters is because the stakes here aren't just emotional. When you ignore that moment, you train your nervous system to confuse inconsistency with excitement. You start believing that your effort can compensate for their disinterest. You turn relationships into projects. You stop listening to your own discomfort because you're too focused on earning closeness. And over time, that pattern erodes your self-respect. You forget what it feels like to be pursued, chosen, valued, and safe. If nothing changes, you'll keep repeating that cycle with different people, different faces, different situations, but the same emotional imbalance. Here's why this shift works. Your brain is wired to resolve uncertainty because uncertainty feels like danger. When someone pulls back or becomes inconsistent, your body reacts like something is wrong. The old version of you tries to fix the discomfort by texting first, checking their social media, over-explaining, or trying to be better so they come back. But a calmer, more grounded version of you, one shaped by the kind of self-command Marcus was pointing to in Meditations 5.20, recognizes that the anxiety is coming from the gap between your effort and theirs, not from your worth. When you stop trying to fill that gap, you break the cycle. Your nervous system learns that you don't have to chase to stay connected. You learn that someone else's inconsistency isn't a signal for you to hustle harder. It's a signal for you to pay attention. So here's the one line you'll use in those moments when someone's behavior shifts and your panic starts rising. Say this to yourself slowly: if they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer. And if you're tempted to reach out anyway, use this sentence instead: I'm going to give this space and see what their actions choose. It's calm. It's honest. It keeps you from scrambling for clarity you can only get by waiting to see what they actually do. Let me put you in a real North American moment so this becomes practical. Imagine you're texting someone you've been seeing casually. Things have felt good lately, well enough that you've allowed yourself to hope. You send a simple message about grabbing dinner this weekend. Hours go by. Nothing. You check your phone between meetings. Still nothing. Night comes, and the anxiety kicks in. In the past, you would have followed up with another message, maybe joking about them being busy, maybe doubling your effort to keep the momentum alive. You would have tried to rescue the interaction before it slipped into silence. But this time, you catch the shift. You notice how your stomach tightens when the red receipt doesn't pop up. You recognize that this is the moment where you used to chase. And you stop. You put the phone down. You breathe. You repeat the microscript in your head: if they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer. Then you do something different: you let the silence stand. You let their behavior show you the truth instead of trying to manufacture a connection that isn't being matched. Maybe they'll reply tomorrow. Maybe they won't. Either way, you didn't abandon yourself to close the gap. Here's your tiny action for today. Choose one person, just one, whose inconsistency has been pulling you into that old instinct. For the next 24 hours, you will not initiate contact. Not as a test, not as a punishment, not as a game. You're simply resetting the pattern so your body learns what it feels like to not chase. If they reach out, you'll respond at your normal pace. If they don't, you've just received information you were avoiding before. This is a clean experiment in self-respect, not manipulation. Right now, take a slow breath with me so this lands deeper. In, hold, and out. Again, a little slower. Notice what your body does when you think about giving someone space instead of filling it. Maybe your chest loosens. Maybe your stomach knots up. Maybe you feel a mix of fear and relief. Whatever shows up, let it be there. This is the moment where the old version of you starts to release its grip. If you want, say the line with me one time so your body feels it: if they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer. One more time, slower: if they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer. Keep this line close, because later, when we get to that Friday night story you heard hinted earlier, this exact sentence becomes the thing that stops you from spiraling over someone who keeps you guessing. It's the hinge where you stop trying to close the distance and start letting their actions reveal the truth. There's a belief you've carried for years without realizing it, that if someone doesn't choose you, it must mean there's something wrong with you. Maybe you weren't interesting enough, patient enough, attractive enough, successful enough, or easy enough to love. That belief is what keeps you trapped in the chase. Because the moment someone pulls back, that old script starts whispering that you need to improve, impress, adjust, or perform. So here's the idea we're working with now. You stop chasing the second you realize that their inconsistency is about their capacity, not your value. If you don't internalize this, you'll keep bending yourself into shapes that aren't natural just to hold on to people who were never prepared to meet you emotionally. This matters because the cost of misunderstanding this is high. When you tie your worth to their choosing, every interaction becomes a silent test you can fail. You watch your messages too closely. You overthink their tone. You pretend you're fine with casualness even when you want commitment. You apologize for communicating your needs. And each time you try to be good enough for someone who can't show up, you cut away pieces of yourself. It doesn't just drain you, it distorts your sense of who you are. You start believing that you're only valuable when you're wanted, and that belief bleeds into work, friendships, dating, everything. If nothing changes, you risk living your entire adult life waiting for someone else to validate you before you allow yourself to feel worthy. Here's why this shift works, and it's simpler than you think. When someone doesn't choose you, it's because choosing requires emotional availability, readiness, clarity, and intention, qualities that are about them, not you. Two people can like each other and still not be aligned. Someone can be attracted to you and still not be capable of a consistent relationship. Someone can enjoy your presence and still not be ready to reciprocate what you offer. When you finally separate their capacity from your value, you stop translating their limitations into self-criticism. As Epictetus would put it in the Enchiridion, your worth isn't determined by things outside your control, and another person's readiness is completely outside your control. A calmer, more grounded version of you learns to recognize that mismatch without taking it personally. Here's the sentence you're going to use when you catch yourself slipping into the old belief. Say this to yourself clearly: their readiness isn't a measurement of my worth. And when self-doubt creeps in, add this line: I don't need to earn the right to be chosen. These lines are simple, but they cut the emotional cord between rejections and self-blame. They allow you to see the situation with clarity instead of panic. Let's bring this into a real North American moment so you can feel it. Imagine you've been dating someone for a few months. Things started strong: long conversations, inside jokes, late-night drives, that spark that makes you hopeful. But lately they've become distant. Their texts got shorter. Plans kept getting pushed. You've tried bringing it up, but their answers are vague, soft, non-committal. One evening, you ask if they see the potential for something more serious. They pause, look away, and say, I'm just not in the right place right now. The old version of you would immediately spiral. You'd wonder what you did wrong, analyze your behavior, replay every moment that might have made you look too eager or too emotional. You'd start thinking you need to be easier, quieter, less needy, more fun. But this time, the shift happens. You pause long enough to catch the familiar tightening in your stomach. You catch the instinct to blame yourself. You breathe. You repeat the line in your mind: their readiness isn't a measurement of my worth. You sit with that for a second. Then you add the second line: I don't need to earn the right to be chosen. When you respond, it's calm. You say, thanks for being honest. You don't argue. You don't beg for clarity. You don't pitch your value. You don't promise to need less. You let their capacity name the limit. And instead of stepping forward to convince them, you hold your ground and step back into your dignity. The conversation ends with clarity instead of confusion, not because you forced it, but because you stopped trying to interpret their uncertainty as your failure. Here's your tiny action for today. Write the sentence: their readiness isn't a measurement of my worth, somewhere visible: your notes app, a sticky note on your desk, a lock screen, anywhere you'll see it. Every time self-blame kicks in because someone isn't showing up fully, read it once. Not as a mantra you repeat endlessly, but as a reminder of what's actually happening. This anchors the new belief in your body instead of letting the old story run automatically. Take a slow breath with me now so your body registers the shift. In, hold, and out. Let your shoulders drop a little. Bring to mind one person from your past or present whose lack of clarity made you feel unworthy. Don't judge yourself for it. Just notice the feeling. Now say the line once, quietly in your mind: their readiness isn't a measurement of my worth. Say it again, slower this time. Notice what changes in your chest, your throat, your breathing. That sensation, whatever it is the space where your self-trust starts to return. Hold on to this belief, because soon, when we move into the later tools, you'll see how this understanding becomes the foundation for pulling your energy back instead of chasing. And when we get to that Friday night moment in the vignette, this separation between worth and readiness becomes the thing that keeps you grounded when the silence hits your phone again. There's another pattern you need to recognize if you want to stop chasing people who don't choose you. It's the habit of overfunctioning, doing more than your share in the relationship, carrying the emotional weight, smoothing over conflicts, initiating all the plans, maintaining the connection, and trying to earn stability through effort instead of alignment. Here's the idea: you cannot create reciprocity by doing more work. And if you keep doing more than your share, you'll never actually find out who the other person is, because you'll be too busy compensating for their lack of effort. The stakes are simple. If you never interrupt this habit, you'll stay stuck in unbalanced relationships where your effort hides their absence, and you won't notice the truth until you're emotionally exhausted and deeply attached. Here's why this drains you so quickly. When you overfunction, you enter a constant state of emotional performance. You anticipate their needs, you avoid conversations that might push them away, you bend your schedule to match theirs, and you take responsibility for the health of the connection even when they contribute very little. Over time, this creates a quiet resentment inside you, a resentment you feel but rarely express. You start telling yourself that if you stop trying, the whole thing will fall apart. And that belief keeps you trapped in a loop where you give more than you receive because you're afraid of what their real level of interest might be. If nothing changes, the relationship you're fighting to preserve eventually collapses anyway, not because you weren't enough, but because you were the only one trying to hold it together. Understanding why you do this gives you the power to change it. You overfunction because it gives you the illusion of control. If you're the one initiating plans, you don't have to wait in uncertainty. If you're the one steering conversations, you don't have to risk awkward silence. If you're the one solving problems, you don't have to sit with discomfort. But the calmer, more grounded version of you, the one you're working toward, learns to tolerate that uncertainty instead of covering it. This is where the Stoic idea from Seneca's letters comes in: you don't attach your peace to outcomes you can't control. Another person's effort is outside your control. The only thing you can control is how much of yourself you choose to overextend. So here's the line you're going to use when you catch yourself slipping into the pattern of doing too much. Say this to yourself: if I stop carrying the whole connection, I'll finally see the truth. And if you need a version you can actually say out loud to someone else, try this: I need us to share the effort here. These lines shift you from emotional labor to emotional clarity. They help you stop performing and start observing. Now let's put this into a real North American scenario so it sticks. Imagine you're seeing someone who's charming, fun, and warm when you're together, but inconsistent in between. You're the one planning the dates, suggesting times, keeping the conversations alive, and making sure everything feels smooth. They show up, you have a nice night, and then the pattern repeats: days of silence, late responses, and vague check-ins. One week, you decide to pause. Not dramatically. Not with a speech. You just stop initiating for a few days to see what happens. Immediately, discomfort shows up. Your mind tells you to text them, to fix the silence, to make sure you haven't inadvertently pushed them away. The old version of you would have folded within hours. You would have sent a friendly message just to touch base, which is really code for "I'm scared of what their silence means." But this time, you remember the microscript. You repeat in your mind: if I stop carrying the whole connection, I'll finally see the truth. You take a breath. You wait. A full day goes by, then another. Nothing. The anxiety is there, but so is a growing clarity. On the third day, they finally text, but it's half-hearted, something like, "Hey, how's your week?" The old you would have jumped in with energy to keep things flowing. But on the ground you wait a few hours, respond calmly, and offer nothing extra. No eagerness, no overfunctioning. And what shows up next is telling. They go right back to short replies, vague energy. And in that moment, You see the truth, you've been doing half of the work this whole time. Not because you meant to, but because overfunctioning felt safer than letting the connection show you where it actually stood. Your tiny action for today is simple. Think of one person, romantic, platonic, or even professional, where you carry more than your share of effort. For the next 48 hours, stop initiating. Don't send the check-in text. Don't make the plan. Don't start the conversation. If the connection is real, it won't break because you paused. If it collapses, that tells you everything you were afraid to see. This isn't about playing games. It's about turning the lights on. Take a slow breath with me now. In, hold, and out. Feel the discomfort that comes up when you imagine not doing the extra work. Maybe your chest tightens a little. Maybe your thoughts start racing with what-ifs. Good. That discomfort is the old habit trying to keep you in the cycle. Now say this line with me once: if I stop carrying the whole connection, I'll finally see the truth. Say it again, slower. Let your shoulders relax a little. You're not losing power, you're reclaiming it. Hold on to this shift, because when we move deeper into the next tools, you'll need this clarity. And when we eventually reach the Friday night moment later on, the moment where the silence hits and you feel yourself wanting to overfunction again, this one sentence becomes the anchor that stops you from stepping back into the chase. There's a different kind of chasing that doesn't look like chasing at first. It's the subtle way you ignore your own discomfort because you don't want to make things weird. It's the moment you feel a red flag, a shift, a hesitation, or a lack of effort, but instead of naming it, you tell yourself to relax, to be easygoing, to not ruin the vibe. You swallow your needs because you're afraid they'll think you're too much. And here's the idea for this section: you stop chasing the moment you start respecting your own discomfort as real data. If you keep silencing that inner signal, you'll continue choosing people who don't choose you back, because you won't be choosing yourself at all. The stakes here are huge. When you dismiss your own discomfort, you end up staying in situations long after they've stopped serving you. You explain away the inconsistency. You make excuses for their lack of communication. You pretend you're fine with casualness even when you're craving emotional reciprocity. You downplay your needs because you were taught somewhere along the way that needing something makes you difficult. But every time you override yourself, you drift further from clarity and deeper into emotional confusion. If nothing changes, you'll spend months or years trapped in situations where you can't fully breathe, because you've trained yourself to tolerate less than you want just to avoid being alone. The reason this shift works is because discomfort is your internal compass. It's the way your body tells you when your boundaries are being crossed or when your values aren't being honored. Most people mistake discomfort for anxiety, or insecurity, or drama, but discomfort is simply information. It's a signal, not a verdict. When you start treating it like data, you stop working against yourself. You start responding instead of reacting. You start acting like someone who trusts their own perception, which is exactly what creates emotional stability. The calmer version of you, the one you've been building through these lessons, doesn't treat discomfort as a flaw. They treat it as a message. Here's the exact line you're going to use whenever discomfort shows up in a relationship and your instinct is to ignore it. Say this to yourself: my discomfort is information, not an inconvenience. And if you need a line to use in real conversations, try, "This doesn't feel right to me, and I want to talk about it." These sentences pull you out of emotional self-abandonment and into self-respect. Let's bring this into a real North American moment so you can actually feel the difference. Imagine you've been talking to someone for a while. You're at that in-between stage, more than casual, not quite defined. You're both busy during the week, so you've planned to hang out Friday night. Around 4 p.m., they text you, "Hey, today's been rough. Mind if we play it by ear?" Your stomach sinks. You know what that usually means. You reread the message a few times. The old version of you would text back something like, "No worries at all. Totally fine." Even though it's not fine. You had been looking forward to it. You rearranged parts of your schedule. But instead of acknowledging your disappointment, you'd push it down because you want it to be chill, easy, unbothered, anything that keeps them from thinking you're difficult. But this time, something changes. You catch the discomfort immediately. You feel it in your stomach, in your throat, and the slight pressure in your chest. You don't judge the feeling. You don't rush to make it go away. You remember the line, "My discomfort is information, not an inconvenience." You sit with that. You breathe. And instead of giving the reflexive "no worries," you respond differently. You text, "I was looking forward to tonight. If you need to reschedule, let's pick another day that works for both of us." It's honest. It's clear. It isn't to blame. It doesn't chase. It simply names the truth. And what happens next reveals everything. If their intentions are aligned with yours, they'll match the energy. They'll say something like, "You're right, let's reschedule for tomorrow. I do want to see you." If they're not aligned, they'll stay vague, avoid making a plan, or respond with low-effort energy. Either way, you get clarity, not by chasing, but by respecting your own discomfort enough to speak from it. Your tiny action for today is to identify one moment in your week where discomfort showed up and you tried to talk yourself out of it. Was it a message? A canceled plan? A tone? A shift in energy? Choose one. And tonight, write one sentence describing exactly what your body felt in that moment. Not what you thought intellectually, what you physically felt. This teaches you to reconnect your awareness to your body's signals instead of letting your mind override them. Now take a slow breath with me so this settles in deeper. In, hold, and out. Bring to mind a moment recently where you said, "It's fine," even though it wasn't. Feel the tightness, the annoyance, the disappointment you swallowed. Don't run from it. Just notice it. Now say the core line with me quietly, "My discomfort is information, not an inconvenience." Say it again, slower, so your body can feel the truth of it. You're not being difficult when you acknowledge discomfort, you're being honest. And honesty is what stops you from chasing people who don't choose you. Hold on to this shift, because soon we're going to talk about what happens when you finally stop trying to fix the imbalance and start observing it. And later, in that Friday night vignette, this awareness of your own discomfort becomes the moment where you choose clarity over panic, something the old you never knew how to do. There's a pattern you fall into without realizing it. You try to fix the relationship by fixing yourself. You start adjusting your tone, your timing, your expectations, your reactions, your availability, anything that might make the connection smoother. You think, if I'm more patient, if I'm more understanding, if I ask for less, maybe they'll stay, maybe they'll choose me, maybe they'll finally show up the way I show up. But here's the idea we're working with. You stop chasing when you stop taking responsibility for someone else's emotional inconsistency. Because the moment you start believing that their lack of effort is something you can repair with your self-improvement, you're no longer relating, you're performing. And if you don't interrupt this, you'll spend your life believing love can be earned through perfection instead of connection. The stakes here are subtle but deep. When you make yourself responsible for fixing their inconsistency, you place your peace in someone else's hands. You turn relationships into puzzles you feel obligated to solve. You monitor your behavior instead of observing theirs. You start thinking that if you're ever disappointed, it must be because you didn't handle something correctly. And because you're so busy optimizing yourself, you never step back far enough to notice whether they're even trying. If nothing changes, you end up building emotional skill while the relationship stays emotionally shallow. You grow, but the relationship doesn't. And that mismatch eventually becomes painful enough to feel like betrayal, but the betrayal wasn't theirs. It was the way you abandoned yourself trying to make things work. Here's why this shift works. You can't fix inconsistency because inconsistency isn't a behavior, it's a capacity issue. You can't teach someone to prioritize you. You can't train someone to be emotionally available. You can't behave your way into being chosen. The calmer version of you, the one grounded in stoic clarity, learns to differentiate between what is yours to carry and what is not. As Seneca wrote, peace comes when you stop laboring for what isn't yours. Their effort is theirs. Their clarity is theirs. Their readiness is theirs. When you stop trying to fix their side of the equation, you finally get to see the relationship for what it really is instead of what you're working overtime to make it become. Here's the exact line you'll use when the self-fixing instinct kicks in. Say it quietly to yourself: their inconsistency is not my responsibility to repair. And if you need a sentence you can say out loud in a real conversation, use this: I need you to meet me where I am, not wait for me to adjust to where you are. These sentences redirect your energy back to your side of the boundary, where your power actually is. Let's bring this into a real North American setting so you can see the difference. Imagine you've been texting someone regularly, and the conversations used to flow. Lately, though, their replies have become unpredictable. Sometimes they respond within minutes, other times they disappear for a day or two. You're supposed to hang out Saturday, but they haven't confirmed the time. It's Friday afternoon and you feel that familiar tension in your chest. The old you would start problem solving. You'd send a cheerful reminder. You'd try to keep the conversation light. You'd adjust your expectations so you don't come off as pushy. You'd tell yourself to be patient. You'd rationalize their silence. Maybe work is stressful, maybe they're tired, maybe they forgot, maybe you're expecting too much. But this time, something interrupts the autopilot. You catch the instinct to fix things. You catch yourself rehearsing messages in your mind to soften the ask. You catch yourself preparing to adjust your plans to accommodate their uncertainty. And then you breathe. You remember the line: their inconsistency is not my responsibility to repair. You sit with that. You feel the discomfort, the urge to send something just to create movement, the desire to reduce your needs so you don't scare them off. But you stay still. Instead of adjusting, you let their behavior reveal their intentions. Eventually, they text you with something vague like, "Hey, not sure what my schedule looks like tomorrow. I'll let you know." The old you would have rearranged your entire day just to be available whenever they finally decided. You would have responded, "No worries. Just keep me posted." But the grounded version of you replies differently. You say, "I'm planning my weekend now. If tomorrow doesn't work, we can pick another day." It's calm. It's clear. It doesn't chase. And what happens next is the truth: they either step up or make a plan, or they fade into vague energy again. Either way, you didn't overfunction. You didn't self-optimize to compensate for their lack of clarity. You simply allowed the relationship to show its real shape. Your tiny action today is this: choose one area in your relationships, romantic, work, or friendship, where you've been adjusting yourself to fit ambiguity. For 24 hours, do not adjust. Do not self-correct. Do not fix the tension. Let the other person show you whether they're willing to meet you without you reshaping yourself first. This isn't a confrontation. It's clear. Take a slow breath with me right now. In, hold, and out. Bring to mind someone you've been trying to handle or manage emotionally so the connection doesn't break. Feel the weight of that pressure, the tightness in your shoulders or jaw. Let that sensation rise for a moment. Now say the core line softly, just once: their inconsistency is not my responsibility to repair. Say it again, slower, letting your breath sink with the sentence. Notice how your body reacts when you release yourself from the labor that was never yours. Maybe your chest softens. Maybe you feel sad. Maybe you feel relieved. All of that is normal. It's your body realizing it's allowed to step out of the role you've been performing. Hold on to this shift, because soon we're going to talk about what happens when you stop trying to earn connection altogether. And when we reach the Friday night vignette later on, this exact line becomes the moment that keeps you grounded when the silence hits and your brain tries to convince you that fixing yourself is the only way to keep the connection alive. There's a moment in every imbalanced relationship where the truth becomes visible, but you almost always look away from it. It's the moment you realize you've been waiting for clarity, waiting for consistency, waiting for effort, waiting for emotional availability that never actually comes. And instead of accepting the truth, you distract yourself with hope. You imagine the potential. You replay the best moments. You tell yourself they're just busy, just stressed, just not ready yet. But here's the idea for this section. You stop chasing when you stop waiting for potential and start responding to patterns. Because potential is a fantasy, patterns are the truth. And if you keep clinging to potential, you'll stay stuck in relationships built on imagined futures instead of real behavior. The stakes of living in potential are serious. When you fall for someone's potential, you start minimizing the inconsistencies. You justify things you shouldn't. You stay longer than you should. You overinvest emotionally in someone who hasn't earned that access. You rewrite their mixed signals into something hopeful. You project qualities they haven't shown you. And the longer you stay attached to the possibilities, the more painful it becomes when reality doesn't match them. If nothing changes, you'll keep building relationships in your mind that never exist in real life, which leads to heartbreak that feels confusing and unfair. But really, it's not unfair. You were in love with the idea of them, not the actual pattern of who they were. Here's why this shift works. Patterns tell you everything you need to know about someone's emotional readiness. Consistency is a form of communication. Initiative is a form of interest. Follow-through is a form of commitment. You don't need someone to make big declarations, you need them to show up in real time. When you focus on patterns instead of potential, you anchor yourself in the present instead of getting lost in imagined futures. A calmer, more grounded version of you, the version shaped through these Stoic principles, learns to trust what is, not what could be. You stop romanticizing their capacity and start recognizing their reality. Here's the exact line you'll use when you feel yourself drifting into fantasies about what they might become. Say this: I'm responding to their pattern, not their potential. And if you need a line you can actually say out loud to someone, use this: I need consistency, not promises. These lines stop your mind from running ahead of the present. They pull you back into what's actually happening. Now let's bring this into a real North American moment so you can feel the difference between potential and pattern. Imagine you've been talking to someone for a few months. There were incredible early moments, deep conversations that went late into the night, a spontaneous road trip, a kiss that made you believe something real was unfolding. Those moments created a picture in your mind of what the relationship could be. But the actual pattern? They're inconsistent. They cancel plans at the last minute. They go days without reaching out. They're vague about the future. When you bring anything emotional up, they shift the topic or give soft, noncommittal responses. The old version of you would ignore the pattern because the potential felt so powerful. You'd replay the best nights, convincing yourself that the magic meant something deeper. You'd tell yourself the inconsistency is temporary, that once life calms down for them, or once they feel safer, or once you become closer, the pattern will improve. You'd stay hopeful because the potential is beautiful. But this time, something interrupts that pattern. You catch yourself replaying moments from the beginning, trying to use them as evidence that the story isn't actually falling apart. You feel the familiar pull toward fantasy. And then you breathe. You say the line softly: I'm responding to their pattern, not their potential. You sit with it. It stings. It clears. It reveals. You look at their actual behavior, not the stories you've told yourself, and suddenly the situation becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. The pattern doesn't match the potential. And because you're grounded, you stop investing in versions of them that only exist in your imagination. Later that evening, they text you something vague like, "We should definitely hang soon." The old you would have clung to that line as a sign of hope, responding with warmth and enthusiasm to keep the connection alive. But the ground you remember is the second line: I need consistency, not promises. So you reply calmly, "Let me know a day and time that works for you." You put the responsibility back where it belongs, on their effort. And what happens next is the truth. Either they follow through and make a plan, or they disappear back into their pattern. Either way, you didn't get lost in potential. You stayed with reality. Your tiny action today is this: choose one person whose potential you've been holding on to. Write down the actual pattern of the last 4 weeks: frequency of communication, effort, follow-through, emotional presence. Not the best moments, not the imagined future, just the pattern. Read it once. Let it stand without interpretation. This single exercise can break months or years of emotional confusion. Now take a slow breath with me so this lands deeper. In, hold, and out. Bring to mind the person you've been hoping would change, grow, or step up. Feel the pull of that hope. It's strong, isn't it? Hope is comforting. But now say the line with me, I'm responding to their pattern, not their potential. Say it again, slower. Notice what shifts in your chest or your stomach. That sensation is clarity returning. It's the beginning of self-trust. You're not rejecting them. You're accepting reality. Hold on to this shift, because the next lesson is about reclaiming your energy once you stop living in fantasy. And when we reach the Friday night vignette later, this distinction, pattern versus potential, is the key moment that keeps you from spiraling when your phone stays silent. There's a deeper shift you have to make if you truly want to stop chasing people who don't choose you. It's the shift from external validation to internal alignment. You've been operating for years on a quiet belief that relationships work best when someone else approves of you, when they like you, choose you, respond quickly, reassure you, and confirm that you're enough. And because of that belief, you've shaped your behavior around earning approval instead of honoring your own standards. But here's the idea for this section. You stop chasing the moment you realize you're allowed to choose people who choose you back, and you're allowed to walk away without needing someone else to confirm that your boundary is valid. If you don't learn this, you'll stay stuck chasing external confirmation, hoping someone else will give you the green light to value yourself. The stakes here aren't small. When you rely on external validation, your emotional life becomes reactive. You feel good when they reply. You feel anxious when they don't. You feel worthy when they're affectionate. You feel insecure when they're distant. Your emotional stability becomes dependent on behavior you can't control. That's how you lose yourself. That's how you shrink your standards. That's how you let red flags slide. And the worst part? You stop trusting your intuition because you're waiting for the other person to tell you whether your feelings make sense. If nothing changes, you'll end up in relationships where you're constantly scanning for approval just to feel secure, which isn't connection, it's dependency dressed up as love. Here's why this shift works. Validation feels good, but it's temporary. Alignment, on the other hand, is sustainable. When you're aligned with your own values, consistency, honesty, reciprocity, effort, you stop negotiating against yourself just to keep someone close. You stop settling for behavior that doesn't match your expectations. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing. The grounded version of you learns that the right people don't need to be convinced. They show up. They initiate. They reciprocate. They choose you without requiring you to chase. And when they don't, you walk away, not because you're cold or detached, but because you've stopped outsourcing your worth to someone else's attention. Here's the exact sentence you'll use when you feel the pull to chase or prove yourself. Say it to yourself slowly, I don't need their validation to honor my standard. And if you're in a situation where you need a calm outward-facing version, here's the line you can use, I know what I'm looking for, and I'm not going to compromise on it. These lines bring you back into alignment with your own agency. They remind you that you're not passively waiting to be chosen, you're actively choosing what aligns with your values. Let's bring this into a real North American scenario so you can feel the shift. Imagine you've been talking to someone on and off for a while. The chemistry is good, the conversations are fun, but the effort is inconsistent. Some days they're all in, texting first, making you laugh, talking about the future in vague but exciting ways. Then other days, they vanish. You're left staring at your phone, wondering what changed. You start doubting yourself. The old version of you would bend your standards to keep them close. You'd tell yourself you're expecting too much. You'd water down your needs so you wouldn't scare them away. You'd get quieter about what you want because you were afraid they'd label you needy. But this time, something inside you pauses. One night, after rereading a vague text where they say something like, "We should hang out sometime soon," you feel the old anxiety rising. You feel that pull to respond enthusiastically, to show you're still interested, to reassure them you're available. You feel that temptation to chase. But you breathe. You say the line in your mind, I don't need their validation to honor my standard. You sit with it. You ask yourself what alignment actually looks like. Does alignment look like waiting days for someone to maybe initiate a plan? Does alignment look like shrinking your needs? No. Alignment looks like consistency. Alignment looks like clarity. Alignment looks like reciprocity. So instead of responding with hope and low standards, you write something different. You say, it would be good to get together. Let me know a specific day that works for you. It's simple. It's grounded. It's aligned. And immediately, the dynamic becomes clear. They either step into clarity, how about Thursday? Or they disappear back into vague energy. Either way, you stayed with your standard. You didn't chase approval. You didn't water yourself down. You acted like someone who knows what they want and is willing to choose themselves when the other person can't. Your tiny action for today is this: write down your top 3 standards for a relationship or connection: consistency, emotional availability, effort, whatever they are. Then choose one situation this week where you've been compromising one of those standards to keep someone comfortable. For the next 48 hours, you will honor that standard without bending. You won't over-accommodate. You won't ignore discomfort. You won't chase. You'll respond only in ways that align with what you've written. Now take a slow breath with me. In, hold, and out. Think of one situation where you've been waiting for someone's attention before deciding how to feel about yourself. Think of one moment where you quieted your needs because you didn't want to lose them. Feel the heaviness of that. Don't judge it. Just notice it. Now say the line softly, I don't need their validation to honor my standard. Say it again, slower. Let your shoulders relax. Let your breath settle. Feel the shift from seeking approval to reclaiming your own agency. Hold on to this shift, because when we move into the vignette next, you'll see this idea in action. You'll see how alignment, not validation, becomes the moment you break the cycle on that Friday night when your phone stays silent and the old you would have spiraled. This is the turning point where chasing ends and choosing yourself begins. It's late on a Friday night, and you're driving home from work with the kind of tiredness that sits behind your eyes. You had tentative plans to see the person you've been talking to, but they never confirmed anything. Around noon they sent you a vague, let's play it by ear, and the old you would have filled the silence with effort, checking in, offering times, and making yourself available in case they suddenly decided they were ready. But tonight, something is different. You feel the familiar urge rising, that quiet panic that says, do something before they disappear. And for a moment, you almost reach for your phone at a red light. Almost. You pull into your driveway and sit in the dark for a few seconds. The quiet feels heavy, like there's a choice waiting for you. This is the moment you've been practicing for across all the earlier sections, the moment where chasing and choosing yourself stand side by side. You unlock your phone and see the thread. No response. No follow-through. Just the same pattern you've been tolerating for weeks. The old version of you would take this personally. You'd tell yourself they got bored. You'd tell yourself you talk too much. You'd feel that sharp drop of shame in your stomach and start adjusting yourself to fit into whatever would make them want you again. But tonight, Section 2 shows up first. The recognition of the moment where you usually switch from relating to chasing. You feel the urge to lean forward, to close the gap, to fix the silence. And you catch it. You hear the line rising in your mind, if they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer. You inhale slowly, once, then again, letting the grip of urgency loosen. Inside, your living room is dim, soft, quiet. You set your keys down and feel yourself slipping toward the old story, maybe I should check in one more time. But Section 3 interrupts that script. Their readiness isn't a measurement of my worth. You let that line sit in your body for a moment. It feels grounding. It reminds you that their inconsistency is about them, not you. You take a breath, put your phone face down on the table, and walk into the kitchen for water. A few minutes later, the disappointment bubbles up, not dramatic, just a dull ache. This is where Section 5 becomes real. My discomfort is information, not an inconvenience. You feel that discomfort fully this time. You don't swallow it. You don't rush to override it. You let it tell you the truth. You wanted to feel chosen tonight. You wanted effort. You wanted reciprocation. The ache isn't neediness, it's clarity. You check your phone again, not out of panic this time, just to see what's there. Still nothing. And now the biggest old habit kicks in, the instinct to fix the situation by changing yourself. But Section 6 is right there with you. Their inconsistency is not my responsibility to repair. You repeat it quietly, almost under your breath. You realize that sending a light, friendly message right now would be you doing their emotional labor. You'd be carrying the connection again, the way you always used to. You look at the phone and choose not to solve something that isn't yours to solve. You sit on the couch and scroll through something mindless, but your mind keeps returning to the pattern you've been seeing. And right on time, Section 7 lands in your awareness. I'm responding to their pattern, not their potential. You think back to the early conversations, the spark, the flirtation, the inside jokes. They were real, but the pattern now is different. And the pattern is the truth. You take a slow breath, letting the fantasy slip a little further out of your hands. A few minutes later, your phone lights up. A simple message, "Tonight got away from me." Rain check? The old you would have brightened immediately, relieved to feel wanted again. You would have replied, "Of course." Whenever works for you, even though it didn't actually work for you. But tonight, you sit with the message before responding. You breathe, remembering alignment. Section 8 rises inside you now. I don't need their validation to honor my standard. You ask yourself one simple question: does this message reflect the effort I want to build something real? The answer is clear. You respond calmly, "Thanks for the update. Let me know a specific day that works for you." You put the responsibility back where it belongs, on their initiative. There's no anger, no coldness, no chase, no desperation. Just alignment. And here's the turning point: you set your phone down and walk away without waiting for the response. Not because you don't care, but because you're no longer letting someone else's inconsistency dictate your emotional state. You make dinner. You take a shower. You choose yourself. Later, when you check your phone again, they still haven't offered a day. That used to devastate you. Tonight, it clarifies everything. You feel steadier than you expected. You breathe once more, slow, steady, and realize something quietly powerful happened. You didn't spiral. You didn't chase. You didn't abandon yourself. You saw the truth, and you didn't run from it. You sleep easier that night, not because the relationship improved, but because you did. At its core, this entire lesson has been about shifting from reacting to people who give you mixed signals to responding from a place of clarity, dignity, and self-respect. It's about breaking the habit of chasing connection and learning to choose yourself instead of waiting for someone else to confirm your value. Every tool you practiced in this episode is really about one central idea: you stop giving your emotional power away when you stop letting other people's inconsistency decide how you feel. You move from mindless reaction to intentional choice, from insecurity to alignment, from chasing to being grounded in what you want. First, we looked at the moment where you typically lean forward the second someone leans back, and how catching that instinct breaks the chasing cycle. Then we explored the belief that someone's lack of readiness reflects your worth, and you learned how to separate their capacity from your value. Next, we talked about overfunctioning, the way you take on half of the emotional work, and how stepping back allows the truth to reveal itself. After that, you learned to treat your discomfort as real information instead of something you should ignore or soften. Then we walked through the shift away from fixing yourself in response to their inconsistency, so you could stop performing for the approval you hoped would make them stay. You also learned to stop clinging to potential and start responding to patterns, because patterns, not fantasies, show you who someone really is. And finally, you practice the transition from external validation to internal alignment, choosing your own standards instead of waiting for someone else to validate them. All of that came together in the Friday night story, where you saw yourself pause, breathe, and apply these tools in real time, choosing alignment over panic and clarity over the chase. Here are 3 do-today steps that will anchor this lesson in your actual life. Today, choose one person whose inconsistency has been pulling your energy out of alignment and pause your effort for 24 hours. Don't initiate, don't over-explain, just observe the pattern. Also today, write down 3 standards you want to honor in relationships or connections, and make one small decision that aligns with them instead of bending. And before you respond to any emotionally loaded message this week, say the line, "If they wanted to be here, I wouldn't have to pull them closer," so your body learns to respond from grounding instead of urgency. If this resonated, next you'll want to watch the lesson on breaking attachment to inconsistent people, where we go deeper into emotional pacing and how to reclaim your focus when your mind keeps drifting back to someone who doesn't match your effort. If you want a whole library of Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.